2023 is here, which is crazy to say. I am a very big believer that if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. I'm going through today and setting up my year ahead because ultimately, cosmetic dentistry is not just like a turn up and do your job kind of thing. There is a lot that goes on in the background, and it's a team sport as well, so you got to make sure that everybody on the team is across it. I'm going to finish this hike. One big thing for me this year is I'm trying to start the mornings off with movement, because I weighed myself at Christmas and I was like, wow, I am very unfit and I have eaten far too much cheese. We're rectifying that. Do you ever get this feeling on holidays? It's like a side effect from working that even though you have all day to do whatever, just relax and zen, you feel like you need to be somewhere. I'm on this walk and I'm like, it's 8 o'clock. I really should be getting into the next thing, and chill, relax. That is one big thing you need to learn how to do, is turn off. I was really moved by a story that my friend told in an episode of our podcast called Youth is Wasted on the Young. She told the story of how she was diagnosed with MS at the age of 23. Her body began to let her down at a young age and she wasn't able to do things she enjoyed, like running. And it made me realize, shit, when was the last time I actually went for a run? I am an able-bodied, healthy individual, and I do not celebrate the instrument that I have within myself. We're so quick to criticize the inadequacies we perceive of our bodies, but we so rarely celebrate them. And so I began to run. Not because I necessarily enjoy it, but because I can. And that's something to cherish, because you never know when that ability may be taken away from you. And this big floof is Max. He needs a bath. So I'm back in clinic on Monday, and first thing that I need to do is go through all of the treatment plans, because particularly with cosmetic dentistry, you will probably end up seeing a patient over a period of 6 to 12 months, depending on the complexity of what you're doing. So you want to make sure you know where you're up to, how things are progressing, and that nothing's getting lost between the cracks. Cosmetic dentistry is a team sport, so you have to make sure that everybody else is across what we need to do to get there. It's so important that you have systems in place. It's a streamlined experience for the patient. You want to be preempting what they need before they even know that they need it. Something as simple as having noted down on their file whether they prefer still or sparkling water just elevates it to that next level. I'm pulling data from our dental software from those reports and then inputting what I think we need to do into our CRM tool that our nurses, our patient concierge, our practice manager all have access to, and tasking it to the relevant people who need to get things done. Things that I'm looking at, for example, I have a patient who is from quite a distance, so I sent off for his job to be done, and it's coming back from Madrid at the moment. And so it's a case of making sure that the patient concierge is getting him booked in. You also need to make sure that the clinical staff are chasing up with the lab. Where's the tracking number? Where's the job? Other things that need to get put into HubSpot. Cases where we've referred patients out to like a root canal specialist. I hate root canals. I'll do single canal if I think that it will be straightforward. I've done one molar root canal in the last 12 months and it was for my mum. I'm only doing this because you want me to. If it was my choice, I would much prefer to refer you to my endo. I do not enjoy it. We have patients who have gone overseas over the December period. From what I can see in the software, they were referred off. The specialist then sends back a report. What was it like? How did it go? What did they find? Is there anything for us to consider from our end? And I always want to make sure with them that they're happy for me to crown and rebuild straight away, or whether they want to hold off and leave it a little bit longer. I've had the occasional case where they'll say, you know what, don't crown that tooth just yet, give it like six months and we'll review it at the specialist, and once they're happy with how it's healed, then we can go ahead, particularly with like cracked cases where it's sort of like, Will it survive? Won't it survive? The last thing I'm focusing on with dentistry, my social media planning. It's a blessing and a curse. It's your marketing. I'm really enjoying having this YouTube channel. I want that to be an avenue to educate people more. The thing with social media is it honestly takes so much time, and I have a pretty deep understanding of it. I need to start figuring out content pillars and how I can start outsourcing parts of what I do. But the thing with dentistry, it's a very particular niche, and it can be quite hard sometimes for people to understand what you need and what you want. I'm trying to create sort of some guidelines so that I can send it to an editor. I know it can get really frustrating then have a nitpicky dentist sending stuff back being like, no, I need this change, that's not right, blah, blah, blah. Also, it's a case of figuring out, am I focusing in on dentists or am I focusing in on patients? I just love dentistry. I just want to talk about it all the time. Another task of mine is to look at my CPD outline, looking at what are the things that I need to focus on in this new year to sort of strengthen. Things are changing so rapidly within the profession. One of the big things that I'm focusing on at the moment, digital surgical planning. We've been doing a lot of pterygoids lately with All on 4. Once upon a time, it was just freehand. You'd just like shove it through, and once you got through the bone, there was like a certain feeling you'd look for, and just keep probing until you get that, which is wild to me. Very freehand and very analog. But now it's all digitally planned with guides. Much less stressful for clinician and better outcome for the patient, which we love. I feel like I'm pretty over CAD. Realistically, most dentists can literally just refer it out to a lab tech, but it's really handy to be able to at least tweak things, because you might get a wax up or a design back from a technician that's like 90% of the way there, but there's still little things that you'll change. Once we've gotten through the clinical side to make sure all the patients are accounted for and we have the respective jobs put out to the different people who need to execute them, we then move to general admin. Stuff like, for example, I know we need a new ring light. I think it's time that we upgrade to a battery-powered one rather than having a cord, because I really dislike cord maintenance that is not well kept. I will put it in HubSpot, but I'm not going to do it the first week, because first week back is always hectic. It's just getting people's feet on the ground to start off with, and then next week we can order that sort of stuff. But you don't realize that the burr is blunt unless you're the one using it. You've got to communicate that to your team. We were trying to enjoy lunch, but then this monster arrived on the scene. Honestly, I can really understand why people from overseas think Australia is full of things that are going to try and kill them. Look at this thing! These prawns were so sweet and juicy though. Another thing I'm really focusing on this year to start off 2023 is how I am as a communicator and building confidence within myself to be able to connect with people in a more meaningful way. My partner Chris is currently studying for the bar, which means in the next 12 months he'll be registering as a barrister. And same story, different profession, but you need to be able to get your point across and also build trust and rapport with people. It's good doing it with a buddy as well, because it holds you accountable and you can practice with each other. And what better place to go through our worksheets than in a hot tub, you know? I really like to take the time between Christmas and New Year's starting back at work to really focus in on those soft skills in inverted commas, because they're so valuable but they're very easy to forget to focus on in the heat of the year. It's all about laying the foundations of the systems that you can then use to carry you throughout the year consistently, because you have to show up every day to see meaningful progress. I just came across the strangest honey. Apparently its benefits is that it enhances pleasure, increases stamina and strength, and increases testosterone levels and longer lasting intimacy. It's a very, very interesting Instagram page. Finished the dental side of things, which is good. It's sort of like a nice weight lifted off the shoulders to know that I'm going to go in on Monday and things will at least have a plan around it. So I'm going to now focus on another side project of mine. So I'm an owner of a honey farm. It's between me and my mum. She is pretty much the worker bee and I am the strategy bee. who figures out all the marketing and the social media and the sourcing of various items. She's a very quick learner. So, for example, we hit 10,000 followers on Instagram this year, and we only started it at Easter, so that's like, what, 8 months ago? Thing with a honey farm is you just don't know what's gonna happen. We were expanding and splitting hives, and normally like you can split them once a year. We had heaps of rain, so there wasn't enough pollen because it got washed off all the plants. You can't take the honey from them because then they won't have anything to eat. You can give them fondant, but you need to make sure that the colony is strong because there's this thing called a hive beetle that was trying to get in. I've learned so much about bees, so random. Because we let them stay strong, they decided, oh, so now we're gonna piss off and swarm. And we were like, great, all that hard work and expense and you've just gone and pissed off into the wild. At the moment, I'm trying to figure out what we'll do with different blends. I only clinically see patients 4 days a week because I need that day in the week where I can treatment plan and I can be managing the bee stuff. At the moment, I've been sourcing fabric because we are showcasing some local Indigenous artwork by a young girl who's from Tiwi Islands, and she's so talented. It's such an interesting expression of modern Indigenous art because it doesn't use your traditional ochre colours, but the beautiful mints and the peaches and just such a stunning colour palette. Until recently, I didn't know how to take a dot painting artwork and then digitize it and then make it into fabric, but that's the crazy thing about the internet is it's not my domain. I'm a dentist, so I don't work in the textile industry. But there's such a wealth of information out there that can explain, or even if it doesn't directly explain, you can sort of piece it together as you go along. Also, as part of the business plan, researching sort of what our competitors are doing around honey. The problem with being based in Sydney, though, is once we get all these textiles and the fabric there and all of it's made up, we're going to need to shoot content, and my videographer is based in Melbourne. So it's going to be like quite a road trip where I'll get him flown up to Sydney. We'll then meet in Sydney and then jet up to the farm for a weekend. And it's like a 6-hour drive. So it'll be like jet out on a Friday night after I finish with patients. Shoot, because like you need golden hours. So we'll be doing sunrise, sunset, just smashing out as much content as possible. And then jumping in the car and coming back Sunday night to then start with patients Monday morning. Bees are great because it's such a feel-good thing. They're super cute, although one of them bit me recently on the side of the head. It was so painful, and I still have this like little bump on the side. I really love taking the time to stop and observe the little details in life. For there to be music, there has to be silence between the notes. And as the composer of your life, you get to pick which notes you decide to include within your song. There's nothing more humbling than to realize just how tiny we are in the scheme of the world. And that's actually a really liberating thing. When I'm deciding what I want to try and achieve in the year ahead, I'm not really a big mood boarder kind of gal, because I find spending my time on Canva, it's sort of almost like when you're trying to study for an exam and all you're doing is highlighting the textbook hoping that something will go in. If it works for you, great, you do you, boo. But I like to come up with my goals and then come up with a plan of what that will actually look like in my life. As James Clear says in Atomic Habits, as you've probably heard 1,000 times, it's about 1% improvements every day. I think it's good as well to break it up into not just 12-month timeframes, but look at it in quarterly outlines, because it's very easy if you're a couple of degrees off your goal to end up in a completely different place. And the difference of correcting 3 months that you've been off track versus 12 months is a significant one. I think it's really important to vocalize what you want to achieve to people that you trust, because it's very easy for dreams to stay just dreams if they're left in silence. Because it isn't going to be easy and it will be a struggle at times, but if you keep trying and trying and trying, eventually you're going to have some kind of breakthrough. Oh, the sun is so intense. I'm really looking forward to the podcast this weekend. We're recording our first episode for this season and it's going to be top 3, bottom 3. It's been a really nice way to spend the morning just watching the sunrise and thinking about aspects of last year. The bad news first. I think number 1 would have to be at the start of last year, my anxiety got really, really out of control. I felt like I was on the precipice of a full-on breakdown. And my psychologist recommended that I go on to medication. It's been incredibly beneficial. I feel like I can be myself now. Because previously I felt like almost like a wounded animal, like up against the wall. Like I would lash out and I was like, this isn't me. But it was just, I was in so much discomfort. And that is the thing with anxiety. It's very uncomfortable. Like it was a low point to get to that breaking point, but good things did come from it, which is nice. I felt like I was personally imposing a stigma on myself if I needed to take medication. I reached out to a friend of mine who runs like an incredibly successful psychology startup, and he was like, honestly, I take mine every day. Not everybody needs it, obviously, but he used to like throw up every single morning because he was so stressed. And like everybody has a different path. It's not just like, oh, you're anxious, take some medication. It was nice to hear that people who are incredibly successful have struggled with this. But I found that very comforting to be like, oh no, this is like a very normal thing. And it's not that there's something wrong with me, it's just the way that my brain works. Low light number 2. I think that I have recognized that I tie my identity too closely to what I do, and I really want to work on that in 2023 because I'm not a cosmetic dentist, I do cosmetic dentistry, and that's an important distinction. I was having this conversation on Laguna Beach with Kyle Stanley earlier this year, who's an incredible dentist creating this incredible AI platform in X-rays called Pearl AI. He's had some struggles previously with his mental health, and he was like, it's fine when things are going well, but when things don't go well, you take it very, very personally, and it can destroy you. So having that distinction means that you don't place all of your value in your job. And I think a lot of people do that. I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, I'm an entrepreneur, no, you are you. And then whatever you decide to do with your time is bonus, you know? My final negative would be that my beautiful sausage dog Pickles sadly passed away very suddenly near the end of the year. I really feel for my parents because he lives with them at the moment. He was 7 and most sausage dogs live until they're like 15, 16. They're a very long living breed, but he just like out of the blue had a seizure and a heart attack. It was so sudden that it makes it very difficult to sort of reconcile. He's gone, going home for Christmas. And normally like when I pull up and open my car door, he comes up and super excited and greets you, but he wasn't there. I think it just reinforces to me the fragility of life. Don't know when you're going to lose the things that you love, so you really need to cherish them as much as you can. I wish I could give him a little pat and a little hug. Now onto the good stuff. Positive number 1. Again, I'm trying to not tie my identity into my achievements, and that was a big thing that I learned back when I was DJing. Just like I would land spots on these festival lineups and these really cool gigs, but ultimately it didn't make me happy. It was the journey. And like I remember I played at Australia's largest music festival, and that was like my ultimate dream and my goal, and it was on my 20th birthday. I played my set and I cried in the car because I was like, I think in my young mind I thought that that would like solve all my unhappiness, and it's like, no, that's a project from within. One of my highlights from 2022 was that I was awarded my DSD Masters, which makes me the world's youngest master in digital smile design, which is wild. But at the same time, I think imposter syndrome is a big thing, especially amongst young professional women. It is the culmination of 5 years at university and 5 years of a lot of learning and a lot of studying afterwards. I'm definitely don't think that it's undeserved, and it's a team effort as well. Like, I stand on the shoulders of giants. My mentors have set my trajectory and they have pushed me beyond what I think is achievable, and that's the beauty of having people who can see what you can be even when you don't necessarily see it. I'm celebrating that, but I also don't want it to be an element that I rely on to validate my abilities as a professional. But it's really cool to be recognized by my by seniors in that way, and people that I really admire and look up to. Highlight number 2 would have to be the success of the honey business. It just keeps going from strength to strength, and people really resonate with it, which is nice. Resonate, because we're not it's not a resignation. So funny. I'm watching this like shitty seagull chase another one. It's all puffed up. It's like I'm really happy because I think my parents have had like a lot of ups and downs recently, and like my parents are such hard workers, so I knew it was going to be a success, but I really appreciate how people have warmed to it. As Simon Sinek says, like, start with why, and people have really fallen in love with our why. It benefits the land around us and our neighbours' crops and our crops. And our product is so beautiful, like it makes people so happy when they have it. I think it's nice that my parents have a win for once, because when you're a farmer, it's like drought and then floods. Heartbreaking, because like year after year, like it just never seems to go right. Like it is literally professional gambling on the weather. And my third highlight would have to be creating the XYZ podcast with my friends. Basically, the premise is 4 women, 1 in their 20s, myself, 1 in their 30s, 1 in their 40s, 1 in their 50s, coming together and talking about, or just making sense of life. I feel really blessed because I do have a number of friends who are older than me. I'm 27. I would say the average age of my friends would probably be like in their 40s, which is like, sounds weird to say, but you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time around. And if you spend time with shit people, you start to smell like shit. I know everyone's like, oh my gosh, I've started a podcast, oh it's great. I do think that it's going to be very beneficial to a number of people, because we've already had people reach out and say like, thank you for talking about this topic. I thought I was the only one who felt and thought like this. And I'm so excited for this season because we're going to start having guests as well. And to finish off the podcast episode, we're picking a word, or maybe several words, that we want to focus on this year. And for me, I am going to pick the word centered. That's something that I want to focus on this year. Especially in your 20s, you are figuring yourself out. I feel every year I've become more and more aware of who I actually am and where I've been pushed to do things that aren't necessarily aligned with who I am. When things happen and life changes, it's like it will knock you off path, but come back to the center. And I saw the funniest thing on Instagram, and it said, the energy that I'm taking into 2023 is, remember, there are hundreds of dead bodies on Mount Everest, and those bodies were once highly motivated people. So maybe calm down a bit. It's the whole concept of wu-wei. Water is passive, ebbs and it flows, and it's not actively trying to erode rocks, but through its presence over time, it can move the largest mountain. It's like, chill out, just be centered, go forth, and do good things.